Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video. Two more Halloweenish films for me to review, and literally, on the day of Halloween. And that's right, and as I teased/mentioned in the last Halloweenish film that I reviewed, these two Halloweenish films that I saved the best for last, well, they too come straight from Disney, and they so happen to be celebrating their anniversaries. So the second to last Halloweenish film that I'm reviewing, and yes, you read the title, you know exactly which Halloweenish film from Disney that I'm first reviewing, that being Hocus Pocus. Yes, Hocus Pocus. I tell you, Hocus Pocus, everybody loves Hocus Pocus. Yeah, but there are some that probably wouldn't enjoy it. I mean, when this first came out in 1993, I mean, it wasn't like a huge success or anything like that. But as the years have passed, everybody has come to love Hocus Pocus. They can't stop talking about it, and, you know, the merchandise that they have of Hocus Pocus, and, you know, my mom, she loves Hocus Pocus, and, you know, so do I. I appreciate Hocus Pocus, and yeah, I would sometimes watch it, especially around Halloween, and actually, as I record this, I actually gave it a watch earlier, and, you know, before I reviewed it, and, you know, I've seen this before, and, you know, I know how it goes, but still, you know, you just can't help but watch these kind of movies, and especially those that are Halloweenish, you know, perfect to watch on Halloween. And, you know, not to mention that Hocus Pocus, the fact that when it was released in 1993, it came out around the summertime, for two reasons. One, it was because, you know, kids getting out of school, you know, during the summer, and, you know, this would be the perfect opportunity for them to see a movie like this from Disney. And two, it's because that, well, it didn't want to compete with The Nightmare Before Christmas, the fact that it was out months later in October. So that's understandable, you know. So, all right, so as always, I will go ahead and read the description/the story. A teenage boy named Max and his little sister, which being Danny, moved to Salem, where he struggles to fit in before awakening a trio of diabolical witches that were executed in the 17th century. So the opening to the movie, because, yeah, opening in the 17th century, and, you know, three witches, they have lured and brought in a young girl by the name of Emily, played by Amanda Shepherd, and with her brother, you know, on her tail to rescue and save her from the witches, Zachary Binks, played by Sean Murray. And yeah, because years later, Sean Murray would go on to be in NCIS as McGee. So yeah. And, you know, because the Sanderson sisters, you know, that we all know and love so well. Winifred Sanderson, played by Bette Midler, Sarah Sanderson, played by Sarah Jessica Parker, and Mary Sanderson, played by Kathy Najimy. Yeah, I think I got her last name right. You know, and that's funny because, you know, the fact that there are some actors where they would sometimes play characters that, you know, both them and their character would share the first name. In this case, yeah, Sarah Jessica Parker's character is named Sarah. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, that's funny sometimes. Yeah, but, you know, that can happen sometimes. You know, it's no doubt about it, you know. So, you know, Zachary, I think, yeah, that's how you say it, attempting to save Emily when even, like, say, they create a potion for Emily to drink, and with their spellbook, Winifred's spellbook, I should say, with that one eye that's alive, made from human skin and so on, and was given by them, the book was given to Winifred by the devil himself, giving her a potion to drink, and thus, like, you know, they would suck, you know, like, her soul into them, like, to become young and such. You know, Zachary, unfortunately, fails to save his little sister, and thus they go from old to young, and that's when, like, you know, they take care of Binks, even when, like, Binks, you know, said, "You hag, there are not enough children in the world to make thee young and beautiful," and them being insulted by that, and thus, for his punishment, they transform him into a black cat. And not long after, well, the villagers and, Zachary and Emily, their father, coming in and executing the witches. However, I think, is he, like, did the movie ever establish if he's Zachary's brother, I want to say? I guess. I mean, I'd say so, yeah, because, maybe, I don't know, Elijah, yeah. Hey, when'd you know? We share the same name, me and the character. Elijah being played by Steve Viborley? Boreal? How the heck do you pronounce these kind of names? I apologize. And again, you know me sometimes with pronouncing words and names, as I've gone on saying before. And Zachary's father being played by Norbert Weezer, if I'm saying his last name right. I don't know if I am. Because Elijah was holding the spell book, but accidentally dropped it, and a page turns, and basically, as Winifred says, whenever a virgin lights the candle, they shall return. And thus they are executed because their necks are to nooses, they're killed, and even when Binks is a cat, he's trying to get his father's attention, but of course, and back then, like in the 17th century, they considered black cats beasts and wild animals, know your history, Not to mention that Sarah Jessica Parker, in her family tree, she had an ancestor who was executed, they thought she was a witch. If you know what I'm talking about, if you heard about this, that's crazy. And thus we then come to present time, and it's set in 1993, and of course that's when the movie came out. And in Salem, because we are introduced to one of our main characters, other main characters, I should say, Max, played by Omri Katz, if I'm saying his full name right. And he's new, of course, and he just moved in. Him and his family moved in 2 weeks ago. And we get a cameo by Kathleen Freeman. Yep, the late Kathleen Freeman, and she plays the teacher, Miss Allen. And, the teacher can sense the fact that Max is new, and the fact that him and his family, they first came from Los Angeles, California. And, of course, Max is new to the whole thing of what the people at Salem, they go on about with witches and Halloween and stuff. And it doesn't take too long for Max to find a girl attractive, Allison, played by Vanessa Shaw. Yeah, I think I got her first name right. And at one point, because, Max gave, Allison his number, and then, he catched up to her on his bike, apologizing and so on, and, she, said trick or treat and gave him a piece of paper, thinking that maybe it's her phone number, but no, returned the paper that he wrote on, giving him his number to her, yeah. And then, as Max is making his way through Salem town and coming up to a cemetery, well, he runs into the two bullies of the film, Jay, played by Tobias Jelinek, if I'm saying his last name right, and Ernie Ice, and, he only wants to be preferred as Ice, played by Larry Bagby, if I'm saying his last name right. By the way, Larry, who plays Ernie Ice, I'm actually friends with him on Facebook. That's pretty cool. So I think, Tobias also, I'm friends with both of them on Facebook. So, and if any of you had friended them on Facebook too. But anyways, so they confront Max, and of course they realize that when Max tells them that he first came from LA, and they start calling him Hollywood. And I gotta say, Ice and Jay were, the only bullies in movies that I've come to like and enjoy, right next to Draco Malfoy and Biff Tannen, so they at one point stole his shoes that he was wearing, and of course, Max, he's not enjoying the fact that him and his family have moved to Salem, and it's a hard time for him, and how he has to put up with his little sister, Danny, played by Thora Birch. And Max has to take Danny out trick-or-treating, and thus he does so, especially since he was forced by his parents. And the parents of the film, Dave and Jenny, played by the late Charles Rocket, and Stephanie Farisi, if I'm saying her last name right, And later on, during trick-or-treating, things get out of hand, especially when they run into Jay and Ice. And Danny is standing up for herself and saying things to them, and Max, he feels embarrassed by this, you know, being embarrassed by half the guys at school. But they're not your friends, and you should be well aware of you know, Ice and Jay. After what happened, they took your shoes, okay? Why would you feel embarrassed? Well, that's just Max, I guess. And Danny's a little bit hurt after what Max said to her, you know, get your candy and get out of my life. Like, dang, that's harsh. And that's when, yeah, Max does come to terms with Danny, apologizing to her and confronting how he feels and so on. And things quickly patch up. And once everything's patched up and they're getting along perfectly fine, they stumble upon a house, and when they go in and they discover that, well, Allison lives in that house with her parents. And then it's brought up that about the Sanderson house, and you know, Allison said that her mom used to work there, but now it was closed. The, like, touring exhibit of the Sanderson house was closed because it's believed that there have been spooky things going on at the Sanderson sister house. Go figure. And thus they head to the house and they break in, and the lights are turned on, and, well, at one point, because they discover a candle, and the fact that, yeah, this candle the flames on it is black, and thus, as it said in the book, that if a virgin lights the black candle, the witches come back. And because Max is a virgin, well, he lights the black candle, and thus, boom, the Sanderson sisters are back. And it doesn't take too long for them to discover, and especially for Mary, because Mary can smell and sense the presence of, you know, I smell children. I tell you, because the Sanderson sisters are fantastic. And of course, Bette Midler, Kathy, and Sarah Jessica Parker, they had a blast doing this film. And they loved the roles that they played, the Sanderson sisters. You could tell. Yeah, they're just having the time of their lives doing this movie. And so they first discover Danny, and then, you know, Max protecting his little sister, and, you know, they take on the witches, and there happens to be a black cat that's present at the house, like, as it's been said, like, you know, the black cat guards the Sanderson sister house if anybody steps foot. And it turns out that, yeah, the black cat is, of course, Binks, because, well, the Sanderson sisters, they transformed Binks into a black cat. And Binks, as the black cat, happens to be voiced by Jason Marsden, a.k.a. the voice of Max Goof. Yeah, I don't get it. Like, why didn't Sean Murray just, you know, also voiced Binks as a cat? Like, was there a reason? I don't know. I mean, no hard feelings on Jason Marsden. He was really good as the voice of Binks. Like, you know, sounding exactly and closely like Sean Murray. So, yeah. And I gotta tell you, like, first off, like, the visual effects in Hocus Pocus are really good, you know, especially for the Binks cat. Like, whenever Binks talks, oh, just even to this day, still looks fantastic, you know? And they did it right. They did it properly. They did it correctly right. You know, if they want to have an animal to talk and stuff like that, that was perfect how they did it. And I can think of other, like, films that have done the same thing, and you know what? They didn't do a bad job animating live animals to talk. Like, I can think of Charlotte's Web, and Disney did a couple of others, like, back then. Like, I can think of the Shaggy Dog sequel, if anybody remembers that, and I did a review on that. Go check it out. Yeah, so yeah. Things getting out of hand in the Sanderson sister house, and with Winifred using her powers, you know, like lightning strikes, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, but similar to Palpatine and Dooku, Force lightning, something like that. And it's funny because Max first shocked at when he hears Binks talk, you know, nice going, Max. No duh, because Max is the one that lit up the candle, but didn't do it on purpose. Like, well, they didn't know what to expect. So they get out of there, and, well, Binks told Max to get the spell book, and obviously, and thus they get out of there. They head to the local cemetery at Salem, and Binks tells them that witches can't set foot, on hollow ground in the cemetery. And Binks guides them through a couple of tombstones, one of Billy Butcherson, and how Billy Butcherson used to be Winifred's love interest, but, Billy was more attracted to Sarah, and obviously the same went for Sarah, and thus Winifred, enraged, poisoned Billy Butcherson and sawed his mouth shut. And then talking about his sister, Emily, and funny moments with the witches, like when they first discover a road, they first think it's a black river, and they're terrified of an incoming fire truck. I mean, I remember like when watching that with my mother, that was probably one of her favorite moments with the witches, just screaming and running away from a fire truck. That's pretty funny. And after the firemen like inspected like what happened at the Sanderson sister house, Winifred going over with her sisters on, getting the book back and creating a potion. And, if they don't do all this in time, and when the sun rises, there'll be toast, pudding. And at one point, you notice that, Sarah actually grabbed a spider and ate it. And according to Sarah Jessica Parker, she actually ate that spider. Jeez. And they then find Max, Danny, and Allison and Binks at the cemetery. And because they can't set foot, on ground, hollow ground, well, they summon, someone out of the grave in the cemetery, and that being Billy Butcherson. And Billy Butcherson being played by the one and only Doug Jones. I'm pretty sure that for Billy Butcherson, if I'm correct, was this Doug Jones' first movie where he was in makeup and stuff like that? I guess. Something like that, Well, I mean, I know that he technically had makeup on. He was one of the Penguin's goons in Batman Returns, but that's different, so... And of course, Doug Jones is Billy Butcherson, fantastic. Even though there's not that much of Billy Butcherson, thank goodness for the sequel, we got more of Billy, so... So Winifred commanding Billy to get them and get the book back, and, throughout the film, because them running away and hiding from the witches, and more funny moments with the Sanderson sisters, of course, because, them encountering a bus driver, and... from the bus driver and everybody else, they think they're just, a bunch of chicks, being, sexy and so on, and them in the witches' costumes, even though they are completely unaware, it's the Sanderson sisters themselves. And then, of course, after, the whole thing with, the bus, well, they, of course, stumble upon who they think at first, and, oh, by the way, because, the bus driver being played by Don Yesso, I think I'm saying that right, After that, because they stumble upon who they think is the devil, Master! And we get the guy who's dressed up as the devil, we, of course, get the appearance of the late Gary Marshall. Definitely one of the, memorable moments of this film is Gary Marshall's appearance, as well as his sister, Penny Marshall, the late Penny Marshall. And the fact that in this movie, brother and sister play husband and wife. That is so funny. And, of course, Gary and Penny, they don't disappoint in this movie. As Penny Marshall is credited, the Master's wife. And of course, a little bit later, and after the Master's wife, as she's credited, throws them out of the house, Winifred realizes that everybody is dressed up in costume and they don't buy that it's actually them, And as Winifred says, wear costumes and run amok. And it's funny because Sarah, going amok, 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 amok. Especially many times where Winifred is abusing her sisters, it's funny. It's in a funny way. It's just funny, sometimes smacking them on the chest or stuff like that. It's funny, and grabbing them by the ear. Funny. Again, because they don't disappoint. Again, they're having a great time playing their roles. And then there's a moment where Danny, Binks, Allison, and Max, they come across who they think is a real police officer, and he's credited as Cop. That's it. Played by Michael McGrady. He plays a guy dressed up as a cop, and they think he's a real cop, and basically they explain to the supposedly cop that telling them about the Sanderson sisters and the fact that Max lit up the black candle, and the cop, like, says to Max, "Are you a virgin?" Who asks somebody that? Like, jeez Louise. And that's technically illegal to dress up as a cop if it looks too realistic. I think for little kids dressed up as cops, it's okay, but for adults, it really depends, I think. So it can be illegal sometimes if you don't go too far, you know what I'm saying? And even after the cop tells them to go away, you know, scram, well, the cop's girlfriend, as she's credited, comes out, played by Lee Hamilton. And, you know, the cop going on saying, "They thought I was a real cop." And by the way, because when they were on the bus, the Sanderson sisters, well, because Sarah was in front of the wheel, and at one point accidentally ran over Binks. But Binks, of course, he can't die, because he's mortal, and immortal, I should say, sorry. And, you know, when he got ran over, because, well, like, he then puffs back, and, you know, you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And when the guy dressed up as the cop and his girlfriend, they were riding on, like, the customized police bike, I want to say, well, they accidentally rammed over Billy Butcherson when he was coming out from the sewers, and, like, accidentally chopped his fingers. Is funny. And then that's when Danny, Max, Allison, and Binks, they go to this Halloween party that Max and Danny's parents have attended to, and a couple of songs that are played there, like Frank Sinatra's song Witchcraft, and then there's also I Put a Spell on You. And of course, the Sanderson sisters happen to also be present there as well, and to find, you know, Danny, Max, Allison, and Binks. And of course, they of course run into Max, Danny, and Allison, I should say. They run into Max and Danny's parents. Their dad is dressed up as Dracula. It's funny how he says, you know, it's not dad, it's Dadcula. Oh, dad, you know. And the mother, according to her, she's dressed up as Madonna. Like, I'm pretty sure that's probably something that Madonna wore. I don't know. And, you know, they're trying to warn them and tell them about the Sanderson sisters, and that's because when they see the Sanderson sisters present, Max gets up on stage, warns them, nobody believes in him, and even, like, Max going on saying, "I know this sounds dumb, you know, but they're right there." And then Winifred says, "Thank you, Max, for that marvelous introduction." I just love how she says that, and thus we get the infamous song number performed by the Sanderson sisters, their own version of "I Put a Spell on You, and now you're mine." And of course, yeah, such a great, like, version of the "I Put a Spell on You," like, you know, performed by the Sanderson sisters, and of course being sung by Bette Midler. I just feel like mentioning this. Like, my mom, for a while, has been aggravated that the fact that but I assume it's out there, right? And maybe on, like, I don't know, albums or something, I don't know. But, you know, the song cover of "I Put a Spell on You," sung by Bette Midler, like, she's been trying to find that and download it. But again, I'm sure it's out there, and you guys can let me know too on that. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention that, because again, that shows you how much my mom really enjoys Hocus Pocus. So yeah, they're performing the song, and Danny, Max, and Allison, they're telling the parents to cover their ears, but really, I mean, the Sanderson sisters singing "I Put a Spell on You" doesn't really have an effect on them, even after the movie, and when the party's all done. You know, one more thing on "I Put a Spell on You," I like how when it comes up to, well, Sarah and Mary, they're the backup singers, when they get up to, you know, singing "Watch out, watch out, watch out," and we see Billy Butcherson right there and just almost about to get them. I like that timing, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's perfect. And so, of course, yeah, they do get out of there, Danny, Max, Allison, and Binks, and, like, I guess they come up to a Red Lobster, I want to say, like some restaurant, sailor themed. In fact, one of like the employees like comes out and is dressed up like a pirate, literally. And that's when back there, because where they're hiding at, and especially from the sisters, Allison discovers, because there's old, ovens and stuff like that. Well, and one opens, Allison gets the idea of what to do and to get rid of the witches. And that's when we then come back to the school, the high school, and the sisters, like, they happen to show up. Like, what made them think of going there, and if they knew that they would be there? I mean, the movie never establishes, and it's not important, so it's one of those things. It's also funny because, you know, Max, like, on the microphone, you know, the whole school, you know, the intercom, yeah. And Max, you know, howling and, you know, welcome to high school hell. I'm your host, Boris Karloff Jr. Yeah. And getting the witch's attention by, they hear a voice. And basically, it's like, what's it called? Like, you know, like teaching you how to speak French, you know. Hello, welcome to the library. Bonjour. It's funny. And they go into, like, this furnace, I want to say, and that's when they lock the witches in there, and thus they burn them. And they think, and you think, that the witches are defeated, they're burned alive, and they're done for. That's what they think at first. And it seems like, yeah, all ends well for them, and thus they head back to the house, you know, Max and Danny's family house, and Binks now becoming a member of the family, and Allison staying some more, and and Max technically got his wish, like, to snuggle up with Allison, you know. And still, Max and Danny's parents are still partying, and the fact that it's late at night, they still have the spell book with them, and also, yeah, because, as I said, they think, and you think, that the witches have been defeated, they've been burned alive. Well, no, because they survive it. It's funny, because when they step out, you know, Winifred's saying, you know, hello, I would like my book, bonjour, because of that repeating and so on, you know. And the witches, they do stumble upon Jay and Ice. And Jay and Ice, like, they say something about the witches, like, you know, like, why are the ugly chicks always out at night and so on? And they are, of course, offended by it. And, like, it's funny because Winifred says chicks, and they lock them up in cages hanging on, like, the ceiling and so on. It's funny. Like, at least they spare the two bullies, and that's what they get, you know. They had it coming to them. Winifred cannot make the potion that she needs, like what she did at the beginning of the film, because she needs the spell book. And, you know, she's at one point, you know, getting depressed and, you know, going through, like, a crisis, I want to say, and reaching out for her book, you know, book, come home. And no luck, but I think, yeah, because the book did wake up at one point, and the fact that when we cut back to the house, it's now 5 a.m, and yet, obviously, because even when Max checked to see if his parents were back home yet, no, because they're still partying. Jeez. And that's when Allison and Max, because they want to make up for Binks, like, they owe Binks, you know, after what Binks did for them, helping them out and so on, trying to figure out how to turn him back into human, and by doing so, looking through Winifred's spell book, and that causes a beam of light to shine, and thus, like, spin around like a lighthouse, because of the rooftop that's part of the house that they have, and, the beam of light does get the Sanderson sisters' attention, and the way they fly this time, and that's the thing, when they went inside Gary Marshall's house, you know, he plays the guy dressed as the devil, they left their brooms outside, and literally 3 girls dressed up as the Sanderson sisters, they stole them. So now this time, the way they're flying, well, Winifred, she has a regular broom, but as for Sarah, she has a mop, and Mary has a vacuum cleaner. Those old vacuum cleaners, especially from the 90s. And so they go after, go to the light beam, and they capture Danny and Binks. And they did discover, Allison and Max, that in the spellbook, salt can be used as like a protective circle, and witches can't step foot, by the salt, And the same thing goes for, like, say, Dracula, So yeah, again, Danny and Binks, they're captured, and Winifred tells Sarah, use thy voice, Sarah, fill the sky, bring the little brats to die. And, we get another little song number from Sarah, Come Little Children. And we see the children being hypnotized by her singing, and yet, because it's like around 5 in the morning, the kids are still out this late? Why is that? Again, this movie never establishes it, and it's not really important. And Allison just realizes that, about what Winifred said, because of the sun coming up and the black candle will soon be out, and thus they go after to rescue Danny and Binks, and by tricking the witches into daylight savings because of the headlights, on the car. They put something over it to make it look like, sunlight. And they fall for it, of course, and they think they're dying, and they collapse on the floor. And, of course, yeah, Danny and Binks, they're rescued. And as for the two bullies, well, Max ain't gonna save them, and besides, they took his shoes, and he takes them back, and, Max says, tubular. It's funny because Ice starts whimpering, Oh, you bullies. So they escape, and of course, the witches, they realize that they were tricked, and Winifred is attempting to capture Danny, especially after what Danny said to Winifred, like, hurting her by calling her ugly and so on. And just her going on saying, she doesn't even know me. and by the way, because Max tipped over the potion that they made, and they were about to give to Danny, but there's a little bit of it left, and they put it in a tiny little bottle. And at one point, because they're driving on the road, Winifred catching up to them, and it was pretty funny, because how does she even know this? Because she says, pull over, let me see your driver's permit. Again, how did she know that? Well, my guess on that, I think I have a good guess on this. She must have probably learned this while they were roaming around Salem, don't you think? Getting used into knowing all this stuff in the 20th century, you know what I mean? So that's my good guess. So that's probably possible, and if you guys agree on that. But anyways, but you know what? It's still funny. It's still funny that she says that. And you know what? It's funny because, hey, Disney never fails to bring us villains they're not only evil, but they sometimes have some really good humor and funny moments. And that especially goes for the Sanderson sisters, without a doubt. And so Danny, Max, Allison, and Binks, they finally make their way to the cemetery, and Billy happens to be there, catches Max, and takes Max's knife that he whipped out, and by opening his mouth, and by the way, because if you didn't notice, because moths literally come out of Billy's mouth. According to Doug Jones, they were real. He actually had moths be put in his mouth. Well, hey, that shows you a good trooper that Doug Jones is. He did it like a boss. And yeah, it was one of those moments that, he had to do it, and it was funny because the first line, the first words that he says, and especially goes to Winifred, wench, and you bucktooth, fly from hell. And also another fun fact that comes from Doug Jones, because in the final movie, Billy first says wench. Originally, it was supposed to be bitch, but Doug felt that was probably not right. And yeah, I think especially, I think that's too much, especially for that being in a Disney movie. Hell and damn have been okay, in some Disney films. Come on, Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent says hell, and all the powers of hell, that's a good example, so yeah, that counts. So of course Billy is a good zombie, and he of course helps out our main characters to take on the witches, and thus Allison with the salt, Max has a bat, Billy placing Allison in his gravesite, yeah, and preparing for the witches to come in and thus, yeah, take on the witches. And, you know, another moment with Billy and Winifred, you know, go to hell. And Winifred's like, you know, oh, I've been there. I found it quite lovely. And Winifred knocking Billy's head off his body. And just like what happened with him early, because when Max, like, you know, used a branch and, like, basically let go of it and, like, have his head come off. That was funny. And Allison, like, she helps Billy out, like, giving his head back, and she's out of the circle, you know, because with the salt. And thus Winifred snatching Danny and, you know, trying to give Danny the potion. But of course, yeah, Binks at one point, you know, jumps and, you know, stops Winifred. Then Winifred grabs Binks and tosses him violently, like literally throwing him. And God, he hit a rock, and that ought to hurt. And, well, because thanks to Binks, like the potion was knocked out of her hand, Max grabbed it, threatening that he'll smash it, and Winifred threatening back at Max, you know, smash it and she dies. Max drinks it, and now Winifred has no choice but to take Max, because, well, he drank the potion, and thus, even like Winifred saying, you know, you're a fool to risk your life to save your sister. But that's what's important, you know, especially what Binks had at one point said to Max, and when talking about his sister, Emily, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, that's an important message in what was said in this movie, without a doubt. So yeah, like Winifred, you know, grabbing Max and trying to suck out, you know, I guess his soul, and that's when, like, the sun starts to rise, and, well, because at one point, Winifred was knocked off her broom, and especially when, like, Max was fighting back at Winifred, and Mary and Sarah, like, coming in to save Winifred. But at one point, Billy, Allison, and Danny, yeah, they grabbed the vacuum cleaner cable, and then they let go of it, and it causes them to fly into the sky, and that caused Winifred and Max to fall, and thus Winifred just has had enough and grabs him. But again, with the sun rising, well, they're too late, and they turn to dust. Like Winifred, she turns into a statue, and, you know, the last word she bleeps out is book, you know, summoning her book. But yep, she turns into a statue/stone. And as for Mary and Sarah, well, they turn to dust, and, you know, their last lines, you know, Sarah says, Winnie, goodbye, and Mary, you know, uh-oh, bye-bye. And Winifred, because she now turned into a statue, well, she still turns to dust, and boom, the three witches are defeated once and for all. And unfortunately, Binks finally dies. I think, because if I remember correctly, yeah, yeah, because, you know, a virgin lighting the candle, and the, you know, the black candle, well, for that to happen, and, you know, with the witches coming back, and for the witches to be defeated, with all that, this would have Binks to finally die and no longer be mortal. Yeah, and thus, yeah, Binks finally does die, as I say. And thus, you know, the ending to the film, like, Danny, Max, and Allison, they say goodbye to Billy, and, you know, because it's funny, because Billy just, and, you know, he falls over and, like, sleeping in his gravesite, and Allison upset that the fact that Binks has died, although, you know, Binks assures Danny that, you know, don't cry, and he's perfectly all right, and, you know, and as he says, you know, that now that the witches are dead, you know, his soul is finally free, and also, he's finally reunited with his little sister, Emily. And Binks, you know, thanking Max and Danny, and, you know, very sweet of Binks whispering into Danny's ear, you know, I shall always be with you, and giving her a kiss on the cheek, and thus Binks and Emily, again, they're reunited, and they walk off into the sunset, and when the gates open, and, you know, it was pretty funny, because Emily, you know, asking Binks, you know, where have you been all this time, and Binks, you know, in response says, you know, I had to wait for a virgin to light the candle. Yeah. And yep, so all ends well, and as the credits start rolling, we see Danny and Max's parents, like, the party's all finished now, literally, because it came to an end, and when, morning arose, jeez. And we also see the two bullies, Jay and Ice, they're still in the Sanderson sister house, in the two cages, and they're singing Row, Row, Row Your Boat. It's pretty funny. And we get one last shot of the book, and the book awakes. And that basically left off the possibility that there could be a sequel, and many years later, we did get a sequel. Hocus Pocus. Again, what a memorable Halloweenish film this is, and coming from Disney. This movie does not fail with all that it delivers. Again, a lot of people really enjoy this Halloweenish film as well as I do, just they can't stop talking about it, from the characters and singing, I put a spell on you. Everything to this movie is just so fantastic. And definitely, I'm giving Hocus Pocus 10 out of 10 stars. Yes, 10 out of 10 stars for Hocus Pocus. And what about you guys? What do you think of Hocus Pocus itself? And, do you really enjoy Hocus Pocus? Do you watch this every Halloween? And what do you think of my review? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. So, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Hocus Pocus. More review videos are on the way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I'll see you guys in the next video/review. One more Halloweenish film to review. And remember when I brought up The Nightmare Before Christmas? Yes, stay tuned for that later tonight. And I'm not reviewing The Nightmare Before Christmas alone. Nope, a very special guest will be joining me. And yeah, you're just gonna have to wait and see. Get hyped and look forward to me and the very special guest that's joining me reviewing The Nightmare Before Christmas. And happy anniversary to Hocus Pocus. Take care and peace out.